I had spent years saving to gift my parents a once-in-a-lifetime luxury vacation, but when the day finally arrived, they chose to bring my sister instead of me. After they left, I canceled everything. I had arranged an extravagant week-long trip to Europe for my parents and myself. When I pulled up to their house to take them to the airport, I thought we were about to share an incredible experience together. Instead, my mother came out smiling and cheerfully announced that my unemployed sister would be going in my place. "Your sister needs a break more than you do," she said with a grin, as if this betrayal was perfectly reasonable. I froze in shock as my sister Lauren walked out with her suitcase, smirking, clearly enjoying the situation. "Mom, I paid for this entire trip. I planned it for us," I reminded her, my voice trembling. She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, sweetheart, you're always so busy with work. You'll have another chance later. Lauren really needs this now." Lauren didn't even try to hide her smugness. "Thanks, sis. You're the best," she said in a tone dripping with false sincerity. My father avoided eye contact, dropped his luggage into my hands, and said nothing. My chest tightened with hurt, but I swallowed my anger and forced a flat smile. "All right then," I muttered. If they wanted to push me aside for Lauren, fine, but they weren't going to enjoy the trip I had built. The drive to the airport was suffocating. Lauren chattered on about shopping in Paris, my mother giggled with her, and my father sat in silence. At one point, my father mumbled, "Thank you for driving us, Violet. I know this must feel strange." "Strange?" I repeated coldly, staring at him through the rearview mirror. He quickly dropped his gaze. Lauren leaned forward with a smirk. "You're not upset, right? I mean, this is huge of you letting me go. I could never afford it." I forced a tight smile. "Of course, enjoy the trip." At the airport, my mom hugged me and thanked me for understanding, while Lauren beamed and wheeled her bag inside. I stood there watching them disappear into the terminal, my heart racing with fury and heartbreak. Back home, I sat gripping my steering wheel, the words replaying in my head like knives. "She needs it more. You'll understand." "Thanks, Violet. Enough was enough." I stormed into the house, opened my laptop, and pulled up every booking confirmation I had carefully arranged. 5-star hotels, guided tour, upgraded flights. Within minutes, I had canceled them all. Refund emails poured into my inbox. Let them explain themselves at the Paris check-in desk. They wanted Lauren so they could handle the mess without me. When their plane landed, the calls started immediately. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from my mother. "The hotel won't let us check in. Fix this now." Then from Lauren, "This is petty, Violet. Call them right now." I laughed out loud. They had stolen my trip, and now they expected me to fix it. Not this time. When I finally answered one of my mother's furious calls, she demanded to know what happened. I calmly told her I canceled everything. Her voice rose into a shriek. "Why would you do that?" "Oh, maybe because you chose Lauren over me," I said sharply. "You're lucky I even drove you to the airport," she snapped. "We thought you'd understand." "Understand what?" I shouted. "That all my work meant nothing because Lauren needed it more?" "No, Mom. I don't understand, and I don't want to." I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone off, relishing the calm that settled over me for the first time in years. The next morning, the barrage of calls began again. My mother's angry voicemails accused me of ruining everything. Lauren whined about being stranded. My father's messages were full of disappointment. When I finally picked up, my mother shouted, "We're humiliated." "Do you know how embarrassing this is?" I sipped my tea calmly. "Embarrassing? Try saving for years, planning every detail only to be told you're not even invited. That's embarrassing, Mom." She tried to guilt me. "We're family. We don't do this to each other." I let out a bitter laugh. "Funny you did it to me first." Lauren's voice came through in the background, crying for her to hang up on me. That was the final straw. "Enjoy your trip," I said coldly. "Oh wait, you can't, because it was my trip." And I ended the call. The silence that followed was liberating. For once, I wasn't their fixer. I wasn't the one cleaning up the mess. Days later, when I finally turned my phone back on, it was flooded with messages. My mother accused me of humiliating them. Lauren called me petty. My father begged me to make things right. But I didn't respond. Because for the first time in my life, I felt free. Later that week, my friend Grace stopped by, bringing coffee. "Your mom called me," she admitted. "But I told her you'd get back to her when you were ready." Her words warmed me more than the coffee. "You finally stood up for yourself," she said. "Don't let them pull you back down." She was right. This wasn't about one ruined vacation. It was about years of being second place to Lauren. Holidays, family dinners, every milestone, I was always the afterthought. This trip had simply been the breaking point. By the weekend, I felt lighter, free from their expectations, free to finally live for myself. But then, as always, the phone rang again. It was my father. "Violet," he began wearily. "Your mother asked me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me. Things have gotten out of hand. Lauren's upset. Your mom is furious, but you're better than this." "Better than what?" I snapped. "Better than standing up for myself. Because I refuse to be walked on again." "That's not what I mean," he rushed. "It's just you've always been the reasonable one, the one holding the family together. This isn't like you." "No," I said with a bitter laugh. "What's not like me is refusing to clean up after everyone else." He hesitated. "You're punishing the family for one decision. Is that fair?" My voice rose. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to replace me on the trip I paid for? Was it fair to push me aside like I didn't matter? You always think Lauren deserves more help, more attention, more of everything. And I'm always expected to sacrifice. Not anymore." Silence stretched on the line before he finally muttered, "I don't know what you want me to say." "I don't need you to say anything," I said firmly. For the first time in my life, I wasn't begging for their approval. I was taking my life back. I just need you to realize that I'm done being treated like an afterthought. From here on out, I come first. "Goodbye, Dad." I ended the call, my hands still shaking as I set the phone aside. For the rest of the day, I let myself feel it all: anger, grief, relief. It wasn't simple, but it felt like the start of something new. I was no longer the family's problem solver, and I had no intention of slipping back into that role. They could manage their own chaos. When my parents and Lauren finally came home, I was already waiting outside on the porch swing, sipping my coffee with an unusual sense of calm as their taxi pulled up. They looked worn out and bitter, hauling their bags up the driveway. "Well, I hope you're satisfied, Violet," Lauren spat the moment she saw me. I raised an eyebrow, still seated. "Satisfied about what?" "Our whole trip was ruined," my mother snapped, throwing her hands in the air as if dismissing the disaster. "We had to stay in awful hotels, eat disgusting food, and don't even ask about the tour." "Correction," Lauren interrupted, arms crossed. "There weren't any. Do you know how humiliating it was to be told there were no bookings under our names?" I took another slow sip of coffee, letting their outrage roll right over me. "Sounds tough," I finally said, cool and steady. "But you chose to take Lauren, remember? I'm sure the three of you had plenty of bonding time." "That's not the point," my mom shot back, her voice rising. "You knew we couldn't afford the kind of trip you had arranged. You set us up to fail." Setting my mug down on the table, I stood. "No, Mom, I didn't set you up. I planned a once-in-a-lifetime trip for us, something I worked and saved for. You were the ones who decided to cut me out at the last second." My father finally spoke, his tone quieter but laced with disapproval. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was going too far." "Too far?" I folded my arms. "Why on earth should I bankroll a vacation I wasn't even invited on? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have arranged it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel your return flights." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic, it's just money. And you're so spoiled," I snapped, my patience unraveling. "Do you even realize how much time and effort went into organizing that trip? Or do you just assume things magically appear because someone else takes care of it?" They all fell silent, caught off guard. "I've spent years being the one who plans, fixes, and makes sure everything works out," I continued, my tone firm. "And you've spent just as many years taking me for granted." "That isn't fair," my mom started, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "No, Mom, what's unfair is how you've treated me all this time. You chose Lauren over me like always, so I chose not to be your doormat anymore. You didn't want me on that trip, fine. But you don't get to benefit from my work if I'm not included." I grabbed my bag from the swing and headed toward my car. "I'm glad you're back safe, but don't expect things to go back to how they were." "I'm done." Their voices followed me, angry, guilty, desperate, but I didn't turn back. Driving away, I felt lighter than I had in years. Usually visits left me drained, but now I felt free. I'd said what I needed to, and I didn't care how they took it. At home, I made tea and replayed the scene in my mind. They had been so sure I'd cave like always, but watching their shocked faces as I walked away was proof of how much I'd grown. Their anger didn't matter. Their guilt didn't matter. What mattered was that I was finally living for me. The next day, Grace called. "So how did it go?" she asked without any small talk. I laughed, leaning against the counter. "Exactly how you'd expect. They're furious, Lauren's sulking, and Mom's probably planning her next guilt trip." Grace chuckled. "Let her try. You finally got a spine, and I'll make sure you keep it." I smiled, grateful. "Thanks, Grace. You've been my anchor through this." "Always," she said warmly. So what's next now that you're not their fixer anymore? That question had been sitting in the back of my mind ever since the confrontation. What was next? I didn't know yet, but for once the choice was mine. I'm not sure, I admitted. But for the first time it feels like I get to decide. Not them, just me. Grace's voice lit up with a smile. That sounds like the start of something wonderful. Over the next few weeks, I started making little changes that felt like huge steps. I redecorated my living room, replacing old hand-me-down furniture with pieces that felt authentically mine. I spent weekends exploring cafes, parks, and hidden corners of my city, things I'd always wanted to do but never prioritized. I even started journaling again, writing freely about dreams and goals that were finally for me. One evening, I opened the spreadsheet I'd used to plan the trip. Instead of regret, I felt determination. That money was meant for a life-changing experience, and it still would be, just not for them. I clicked open a new browser tab and typed, "Solo travel ideas." A month later, I booked myself a trip to Italy. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming joy. When I stepped off the plane, the freedom hit me instantly. I wandered through cobblestone streets, marveled at ruins, and lingered in cozy cafes. No schedules, no compromises, just me. Sitting on the Spanish steps with gelato in hand, I pulled out my journal and began writing, learn a language, start a business, travel to 5 more countries. Each word felt like building blocks for the life I wanted. On my last night in Florence, I dined at a little riverside restaurant, watching the sunset turn the sky into gold and rose. And I realized it wasn't just a vacation. It was a turning point. I didn't need their validation. I was enough on my own. When I returned home, my parents reached out, softer this time. "Hope you had a nice trip," one text from Mom read. "Maybe we can talk soon." I set the phone down without replying. I'd respond only when I was ready, and that in itself was powerful. A week later, Mom called. This time I picked up. "Hi, Violet," she began, voice gentle. "How was your trip?" "It was incredible," I said evenly. "That's good to hear," she hesitated. "We've been reflecting. Maybe we handled things badly." "Badly?" I let out a dry laugh. "You replaced me on a trip I paid for. Badly doesn't even begin to cover it." "I know," she admitted. "We didn't realize how much it would hurt you." "And Lauren," I asked, "does she regret anything or is she still blaming me?" "She's upset," Mom said slowly, "but I think she knows she could have done better." I sighed. "Mom, this wasn't just about the trip. It's years of being pushed aside while Lauren got priority. I'm not doing it anymore." A pause, then. "We understand. We'll try harder. We don't want to lose you." Her words tugged at me, but I refused to let guilt decide my choices. "I'm glad to hear that, but it'll take more than promises. I need actions, not apologies." "You'll see them," she said quietly. "We'll give you space, but I hope you'll let us back in one day." After the call, I felt a mix of relief and doubt. Maybe they meant it. Maybe they didn't. But either way, it wasn't my responsibility to fix them. In the months that followed, I kept my boundaries strong. I replied when I wanted, ignored when I needed to. My focus was on building my own life. I took a photography class, joined a hiking group, and started planning my next solo adventure. Each step felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. One evening, watching the sunset from my balcony, it hit me just how far I'd come. I wasn't the person who bent over backward for people who didn't respect me. I was someone who valued herself, who drew lines, who wasn't afraid to demand better. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit subscribe, follow for more, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next one.